Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin from CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, and history. I want to start off today with actually a continuation of what we've been talking about in previous weeks. I featured, I think it was last week maybe, or if not the week before, I featured a print by Oki Hashimoto, and it's one of his most known designs of the iris scroll. And I featured two different impressions. One was an experimental early trial print, and one was the finished one. And I wanted to finish that conversation about Japanese prints, 20th century prints of beauties, with the subject of the flower of irises. And so today I want to feature two additional prints, one by a Shinhanga artist and another one by a Sosakuhanga artist, that do the same thing. They do a portrait of a bijinga, or a beautiful woman, set against a backdrop of irises. And I think these two prints are a really interesting contrast between the two genres of Shinhanga and Sosakuhanga. And, we could get into the particulars in a moment, but, I just wanted to introduce both of these designs. So without further ado, let's have a look at the table. So I have two here, and I'll discuss the Sosakuhanga second. But this particular design is by the artist Kondo Shiun, and not a lot of information is known about Kondo. There are no dates, and also I should be careful with my pronouns, because there is maybe a rumor, maybe there's some evidence to suggest that Kondo could have been a woman. Shiun was the given name, and so some people believe, based on that name, the given name, that the artist could have been a woman, which, if that was the case, it would be a very rare occurrence for a Shinhanga artist that was Japanese to be a woman. I would say, by and large, 99% of the Shinhanga artists that worked in the early to mid 20th century that were Japanese were actually male. But it's also fascinating to know that there were some female artists, but they were Westerners. And that is a topic for another day. But for today's talk, I just wanted to sort of showcase a beautiful design by Shinhanga artist. This design was originally produced for a calendar set, executed in 1924. This impression is not part of that calendar set. This was a later printing, I would say about 10 to 20 years after the calendar, probably around the 30s or so, based on the paper, but it wasn't part of the calendar set. But nonetheless, I just wanted to highlight how beautiful this work is, and of course, the printing quality that the Shinhanga artists achieved, particularly in this design. The hair is marvelous, and the beauty is sort of kind of sitting there with her hand on her face, almost lost in thought, in a very contemplative pose, with beautiful iris flowers in the background here. So I'm just going to zoom in and stop talking for a moment so you can enjoy the design. I want to highlight how fine the hair has been printed. There's several printings of the hair. There's an underprinting where it gives you this kind of shadow, and then there's an overprinting of gray that with a little bit of white over it that creates this wonderful highlights. You could almost sense light reflecting off the sheen of her shiny black hair. It's marvelous. It reminds me and I think this was the artist's intention of the Utamaro designs, of the big head Utamaros, that we've all have come to love, and this echoes those designs. I'll also point out here the bokashi, the light of the kind of a gray that graduates to a kind of a darker black, shiny, black surface. It's the contrast is stunning. And then there's some very faint blush on the cheek and underneath the eye there. Everything has been so well carved and printed. It is perfect, really. The printing is just perfect on this impression. And I don't know if you can get a sense for it, but the background has a wonderful wood grain effect, which is often seen on Shinhanga prints, or even ukiyo-e prints. It started in the ukiyo-e period, and the Shinhanga artists and the publishers really were keen on adding those embellishments and prints as well. So this printing is airy, it's soft. There's kind of a beautiful summer glow to the design. And if we think back to the Oki Hashimoto print from a few weeks back, same sort of idea, a beautiful woman, young lady in front of these beautiful irises, and this theme continues. And in this particular print, this is by Maekawa Senpan, and he was a Sosakuhanga artist who worked in the early 20th century. He passed away, I believe, after the war, and so he, there aren't that many larger scale prints. He produced a lot of illustrated books. He was actually a comic illustrator. He worked on newspapers and publications, and he learned woodblock carving. He was actually kind of self-taught, but worked with Hiratsuka and Kitaoka and to sharpen his skills per se. And so this design sort of reveals that self-taught quality in his work, which has a beautiful, or a wonderful charm to it, but it's also very expressive. And here we have a young girl sort of kind of prancing, walking around in between these beautiful irises. And the girl is done in Senpan's kind of very characteristic style of this period in the late 30s, early 40s. She almost has a Picasso or Greco-Roman quality in her face, and maybe even an Egyptian, particularly the stance, actually. But it's a very playful design, very expressive. And for Senpan and the Sosakuhanga artists, they weren't interested in producing something that was like perfect, like this Kondo design. They were interested in producing a design that was expressive of a particular emotion or what they wanted to say. They really had something to say. And this design is very playful, very summer-like, very playful, and whimsical. And I'm going to zoom in, stop talking for a moment so you can enjoy the design. I'll let the design speak for itself. What you'll note on this print is these interesting little gaps here, and those are, one can say those might be printing flaws or off registration marks. But I also think, sorry, I'm getting a call there. I also think that's just sort of part of the charm. It actually certainly adds a highlight to the dress. but you see these imperfections, not necessarily on this print. I won't even say these are imperfections. Perhaps they were planned, but you see them on Sosakuhanga prints, particularly Senpan and early works by the Sosakuhanga artist, because it sort of just shows sort of the self-taught, self-carved, self-printed kind of quality of these designs, but it also kind of expresses kind of a spontaneous quality in the printing. It's very expressive, and these things highlight how different these artists approached woodblock printmaking versus the Shinhanga artists who designed the works, but the publishers hired artisans to carve the blocks and print the prints. This represents the pinnacle of printing. It just shows a perfection of the art form, and here that is set aside, and what is the main focus is the charm, the immediacy of the design, the expressive quality of the design. So I'll zoom in one last time so you can see both prints. I'm running a little late today. I'm going to go see my paper conservator. I have a couple things to pick up and a couple prints to drop off. And so I just wanted to share these wonderful designs with the same motif done in a very different manner. I think, again, not to beat a dead horse, but these two designs really reflect the difference between the approaches these two genres, where these artists really focused on different aspects of the print's production. And the other thing I wanted to show before I go is that this design is highlighted in this really great book, The Female Image, 20th Century Prints of Japanese Beauties. I highly recommend this book. And they show several of the calendar prints that belong in the set. And I should just, kind of show you there the print here. It looks a little darker in the book versus what it looks like in person. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me for a very brief little talk on Sosakuhanga and Shinhanga prints. But I thought it would be a great comparison to sort of highlight the different perspectives on those two genres and how those artists within those genres express themselves. So, I'll start to do something a little bit different in the coming weeks. But if you haven't had a chance, I encourage all of you to go to my website and look at our current, which is not just our current, but our new exhibition that went live a couple weeks ago, which is also a current exhibition. And there's a wonderful group of Shinhanga and Sosakuhanga designs, many very rare works with a lot of information. So what we do on the site is we offer a lot of information on the prints. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in the market to enjoy these prints. A lot of these prints, the images are large. You can examine the images on your screen quite well. And I hope that you'll find the information useful so that all of you can become more familiar with these prints and sharpen your eye in terms of quality. And also, we offer a diverse grouping. I'd say there are some dealers that are often surprised by some of the prints we offer. So please, if you haven't had a chance, we encourage you to have a look on their site. And, feel free to ask any questions you might have either on the exhibition or in this video. If you have any questions or there are topics you would like to see addressed in the coming weeks, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'd be happy to develop a Woodblock Wednesday surrounding or around your concerns or your questions or your interests. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.